South Africa to overhaul GDP data from September. IMF trims global economic outlook but tones down risk warnings. And World Economic Forum official hopes for closer ties with China. Thank you for joining us and welcome to Business Incorporated. I'm Chimezi Obi Iwago. We get the show started with the markets, and major markets we track here on the African continent were subdued at intraday today, with the South African JSE index heavily beaten after the International Monetary Fund cut the country's growth forecast to 0.8% this year and 1.0% in 2021, following recent downward revisions to the South African Reserve Bank's forecast. The JSE index was down 2.04% at intraday. The Nigerian stock index was down 0.22%. In Egypt, the EGX 30 was down 0.96%, and Kenya closed marginally lower on Monday. And major Gulf stock markets moved sideways at intraday, with financials and energy stocks weighing on Saudi Arabia and real estate shares underpinning Dubai's index. Saudi's benchmark index dropped 0.39%, with state-owned Saudi Aramco shedding 0.6% and RG Bank losing 0.3%. The International Monetary Fund trimmed its forecast for Saudi Arabia's economic growth to 1.9% this year due to oil output cuts agreed with oil exporters, having previously forecast the kingdom's gross domestic product would grow 2.2%. The Qatari index, on the other hand, was up 0.04%, driven by a 2.4% leap in lender Masraf Al Rayan after the bank reported a higher annual profit. In Dubai, the index edged up 0.14% as Emma Properties gained 0.5%, while its unit Emma Malls added 1.1%. Abu Dhabi's index eased 0.55%, Emirates Telecommunications retreated 0.5%, and Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank was down 0.3%. In Europe, stock markets tumbled in the morning at the start of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, as concerns over a new strain of pneumonia in China hit risk assets. For more, here is Conrad Wilson. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon. I'm not sure we have wished ourselves Happy New Year. I'm just seeing you for the first time this year. Happy New Year then.
Happy New Year, Chimmy, and thanks for having me back on Channels TV.
You're welcome. Well, the World Economic Forum is kicking off in Davos today. What are the highlights at the beginning of this meeting?
I think definitely the highlight on this very first day of the Davos World Economic Forum is that we have Greta Thunberg and Donald Trump both speaking at the event today. And of course, neither the environmental activist Thunberg nor the US president had to say particularly new things. But the mere fact that they are both there on this very day is important for the forum and for, the world watching it, as they are both so perfectly representing two very opposite sides of how to perceive what's important in the world. On the one hand, we have the US president with his America First agenda, with his love for old technologies like coal, also very often a bit of an old school approach to making business. And on the other hand, we have Greta Thunberg, the young Swedish activist who so passionately fights for what her generation needs, a better environment in the future. I have to say, in the business world, a majority of people is more interested to hear what Greta Thunberg has to say. There is a sense in the business world that yes, economic challenges are ahead with climate change, that this has a lot to do with giving up something, but there are also lots of opportunities. And this is something that has definitely changed. Imagine today the president of the World Economic Forum, who used to be a conservative politician in Norway, Børge Brende, he said, we have to make the emitters paying the real price of their emissions. Imagine this said by a conservative politician at a meeting of mostly conservative business people a few years ago. Nobody would have imagined this.
All right, let's look at the market trend today. Asian stocks have tumbled on concerns over the outbreak of coronavirus in China. Our markets in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Sydney all retreated. Are people in Europe concerned about a potential epidemic as well?
Yes, they are. Of course, for the moment, if you talk to experts here, they all say that the problem still seems to be contained and that it seems to be limited to Asia. But of course, everyone has in mind what happened in 2003 when the SARS virus in China and Asia infected about 8,000 people. 800 people at the time died of this other virus that, tormented Asia in 2003. Also, of course, we have to not forget that Hong Kong is a place in trouble, has been in trouble for quite a while now with the protests there. So, of course, the new virus hitting China is not the only story on people's minds. I also have to say, of course, there are concerns that eventually this might become global. Several airports in the United States, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York, already have driven up their screenings of air passengers. If this, of course, is the case, if we hear of, passengers in airports outside China being caught with the virus, this would be another step of escalation.
Interesting. Well, let's look at some corporate earnings. There are a number of them coming out from the European space. Companies reporting their earnings. Heidelberger confirming the difficult situation of manufacturers, but also Swiss Bank, UBS with not so good numbers. What's up with them?
Well, they are really facing problems, and this despite an overall sentiment environment that we've seen, which has become slightly more optimistic in recent weeks. The earnings reports of those two companies shows that there are companies out there who do not have really reason to be very optimistic. Heidelberger Druckmaschinen, the large printing machine maker, of course, very dependent on what's going on in the world's economy. Slower demand in the world's economy, of course, hit the business of this printing machine maker quite hard. UBS, it's not a traditional typical European bank. It can be a bit more compared with an American bank because it has the traditional lending and borrowing business, which is very reliant on interest rates, but it also has a large investment banking unit. And here, I have to say, business at UBS was not really good, especially towards the end of 2019. So this shows that this bank cannot benefit from a very strong situation in the United States that other large investment banks have seen there, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley. UBS, no, investment banking saw a lot of assets leaving the bank, and that, of course, makes many people here wonder what to expect from other European banks who also have been strong or still are strong in investment banking. Deutsche Bank, of course, still being one of them.
All right, Conrad, let's keep an eye on what is happening in Davos. We'll talk tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the day.